Well, good morning, and thank you for asking me to speak today. I personally found Ita Buttrose's speech absolutely inspirational, and I promise to listen to Bill Anton a lot more in the future and start exercising. But this is rather an interesting conference because we've had all this inspirational talk and speakers, and then they asked me to come along, a plaintiff lawyer. So I think I'm going to bring you down, but that's a reality check, I guess, as to what the situation is in Australia. The law is always a little bit behind the medical position or what might be happening out in the real world, and the law is quite conservative. I realise that, on the whole, doctors loathe lawyers. But, some of my friends, they're doctors, and they're always telling me good anti-lawyer jokes. But I'm here to help you avoid coming into contact with lawyers, and that can happen in a number of ways. You could be at the end of a medical malpractice lawsuit, or as Michael has just explained to you, you could easily, very, very easily come to the attention of the medical boards in Australia. The medical boards are quite aggressive at the moment because, let's face it, we've had Dr. Death, we've had the Bega Butcher, and we've had a whole lot of horrible situations in Australia that have made our medical boards far more aggressive. And if you're in an innovative area, which clearly you are, cutting edge, then, there's going to be pushback towards that, and there's going to be a conservative approach taken. The American speakers this morning have explained the various stages that they've found in America in introducing this sort of medicine. So, you've got to realise that there's some high-risk aspects here. So it's a very entrepreneurial area. It will be viewed as such by our courts, that you are practicing in an entrepreneurial area, notwithstanding the goodwill and the incredibly interesting ideas about preventative medicine. It will be considered entrepreneurial, and our courts might take a dim view of some of that because they still like the traditional areas of medicine. Now, I think there's some really low-risk aspects, or not really low risk, but relatively low-risk aspects to your practice, namely the preventative medicine, the conservative advice that I received from Bill constantly about diet and exercise. That's all conservative and low risk as far as a malpractice suit. But you've got some really high-risk areas, the cosmetic surgery, and prescribing human growth hormones, and perhaps some of the other hormone areas. These I would describe as the high risk. And, trouble, lawsuits, professional misconduct allegations can all be avoided very easily with good practice and reasonable standards. Integrity, good systems, ethical practice, and staying away from conduct that strays into illegality. That will all keep you out of my way, not coming across my law firm or the medical boards. The other key thing about avoiding lawsuits is communication. Most of the complaints we hear from people are about poor communication. I mean, obviously there's some absolutely catastrophic medical mishaps in Australia, but there's also a lot of complaints that come around to the issue of communication. Now, on the whole, I think you probably would be pretty good communicators because you're looking at a more holistic approach and you're looking at preventative medicine, but it's something to be borne in mind. My law firm, a national plaintiff law firm, we receive hundreds of complaints every month about doctors. Hundreds. Doctors and hospitals. Of course, very few of those complaints will turn into a malpractice action because, they might be very trivial. They might be about tooth 22 root filling, or they might be somebody that clearly has a psychological issue. But underlying those complaints, as I said, are some very, very serious allegations and tragic outcomes or death. As I said, a lot of them come from poor communication. Our high-risk areas are obstetrics, which is my area of practice, accident and emergency care, and a lot of complaints about GP negligence involving misdiagnosis or failure to refer. These are areas that are frequently arising. Now, I think quite a lot of you at the conference are from GP specialties, so that's something to be aware of, that we do receive a lot of complaints or lawsuits about GPs. The GP negligence can arise from the failure to recognise the severity of the symptoms, failure to organise the appropriate tests, and failure to refer to specialists. In thinking about speaking here today, I thought that could be a real trap in your area, that if somebody was coming to you for sort of anti-aging or age management issues, that you could miss the underlying problem that may require a more mainstream approach, such as a colonoscopy that could diagnose a cancer. So I thought that could be a really high-risk area, and where you might end up receiving a lawsuit if you were to miss, to be focused on the hormone side or even the diet and preventative medicine side. You could miss the key diagnosis. So, as I've set up there, you have a duty to evaluate the patient's overall clinical picture and not just the age management issues once they've come to you. It won't be a defence to say, well, they didn't come for the mainstream approach, they came for something different. You have to cover the other area. Have you had a colonoscopy or whatever the mainstream test might be? Now, my firm has just finished a case involving exactly that sort of issue, only not quite a person searching for age management. But it was a patient that went to a GP with altered bowel habits and stomach cramps, and he was diagnosed as having a bacteria and prescribed antibiotics. He went 23 times to 3 GPs in the same clinic, and it took 2 years for them to advise him to have a colonoscopy. And by the time that was done, that diagnosed a really large rectal cancer from which he's now died. So that was a sad case. And it's the sort of cases that we're seeing quite a lot involving GPs around this failure to pick up an underlying cancer. So I just raise that as a potential area. You need to always give the patient best practice treatment, and as I've said, refer for appropriate testing or to a specialist if necessary. It's very easy for GPs to practice risk management by referring to a specialist if the situation calls for it and ruling out these more sinister problems.